Yes. What's going on, everybody? This is another episode of Rolam Live. I am here with Robbie J. Atkinson. Robbie, how you feeling tonight? You good?
I'm feeling great. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. Um, if you don't know, well, first of all, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of this show tonight. If you don't know, this is a show called Rolam Live. My name is Rolam. I'm your host. This is a show where I talk to creators and creatives about life and creativity and how it's all connected. And so, thank y'all for being here. Thank you, Robbie, for being here. I'm excited to talk to you about everything, your life, your creativity, your work, because you're doing such great things in the community. So I'm excited to talk about that. But before we do that, a couple of things. If you want to support the show, there's a link scrolling down at the bottom. You can buy me a coffee. It's buymeacoffee.com/Rolam. That's the first thing. The second thing is that um, a good friend of mine, Danny J. Quick, has a Kickstarter going on right now. It's for the 10th issue of his comic book series called The Ace Blade. It's for his 10th issue. We are 20, I think we have 20 days left, and he is pushing towards 10K. And so if you're into Kickstarters, if you're into, supporting independent creators, definitely go check out that Kickstarter. And outside of that, I think that's it. So, Robbie, now I'm going to start with the question that I love to ask people. Um, what is inspiring you right now? What are you reading? What are you watching? What are you listening to? What's getting the creative juices going for you right now?
That is an excellent question. Lately, because I have been working on some character designs for the light novel that we're releasing this year. There's a character that I'm trying to get a visual for, who had already been well fleshed out in terms of what has been written. And I have been looking at the likes of Tetsuya Nomura, the game designer behind Final Fantasy. I've been looking at Akihiro Yoshida, who is another one of the game designers for Final Fantasy, and I've been looking and very inspired by like different kinds of aesthetics, like cybercore. I've been looking into
You said cyber what?
cybercore.
Oh, okay. I've
Hmm.
never heard of that. I
Yeah.
gotta look into that.
So along the journey of writing the Seventh Kingdom, because I'm integrating different aesthetics, I've had to do a bit of research on that. Cybercore, cyber sigilism, Fruitier Arrow, different things like this I like found out about. And so this is a character who, the same way that the same way that Tetsuya Nomura kind of took from like Y2K and visual K movement in Japan to create like that signature like belt buckle zippers all over the character's kind of look. I'm kind of trying to pull from and am inspired by like these other aesthetics and seeing how I can integrate like that aesthetic into the character's design. So that has been like a big, heavy inspiration for me as of lately.
Nice. That sounds incredible. Something I'm definitely gonna have to look into. Do I sound like really loud right now? Does this sound weird?
Mm-mm. You sound
Okay.
fun to me.
It sounds, I don't know. Something's happening with my situation. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, we'll continue. Um, no, that's great though. I think that I'm definitely going to look into cybercore. It's always interesting, like when we're creating these stories and finding the different influences and visual touchstones, right? And trying to bring all those things together. Like you said in your manga Seventh Kingdom, right? You have a lot of different visual inspirations and you're like pulling those things together.
Mhm.
So definitely super interesting to think about some of those influences, right? Now, what's inspiring me right now is there's a show on, is it on Paramount? I think it might be on Paramount, but it's called The Agency. And it's like a spy thriller, you know,
Mhm.
Michael Fassbender is in it, and he's like this spy. He's working for like the CIA or whatever, and it's like a really like stylish, like cool, like spy show. I just love espionage shows anyway. So, but watching that has me like really like in that spy thriller mind frame, and I'm like, yo, don't want to tell a spy thriller story. I think I do. I just got to figure out what that's gonna be. You know what I'm saying? So anyway,
Yeah.
that's getting
Huh.
that's getting my wheels turning, if you will. You know what I mean?
And see, you know something's going to be good when Fassbender's in it because he's just one of those actors. I have a general rule that like certain actors, when you see their name attached to the project, you almost have like an expectation set. You know it's going to be good, even if you don't know entirely what it's about.
Right.
Fassbender is one of them, in my opinion. And then for me, Tom Hardy is another one who like
Oh,
his name on it. I'm like, okay, I'm
yeah.
curious. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen Is it Mobland? Mobland? I
No,
think it's
I've
called Mobland. So he's like a he's not really an enforcer. I guess you could say he's like an enforcer for the mob, but it's like in London. So
wait.
they did one season. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking of a movie with the two twins that was also involving mobs.
Oh, that was it started with an L. I'm gonna have I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah.
That was cool because he played both characters, right?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. That was cool. That was cool.
Oh,
But this is a show that came out, I think, last year.
oh,
Mobland came out last year. Pierce Brosnan plays like the boss. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
But that was a pretty cool show as well.
Okay.
Okay. My next question, before we get into who you are and what you do, how do you personally define creativity?
Ooh, such a good question. I think creativity is the assimilation of all the things that sparkle in the world to you,
Mm,
and kind of reinterpreting that in your own way, whether that's through music, through poetry, through film, writing, what have you, illustration. And I think, interestingly enough, I have such a succinct definition for it now because I literally just wrote a Substack where I think that's what I put as like the last sentence because that is very much where like I think inspiration and creativity converge is you take inspiration from these things that sparkle, that stand out, that capture you, and then you integrate it in your own way and present your own take on it. So that to me is creativity and is kind of that flow. It doesn't always have to be a flow. Some people they're used to fighting with their creativity, but for me, the best experience and sometimes the best results come from when you're like in that flow state where it's like the work you're working on kind of just creates itself because the
yeah.
inspiration is just it's flowing out. So
Yeah. Side note, the name of that movie is Legend.
legend,
That's the name of that
yes,
movie. Yeah.
yes,
I knew it started with an L, but I couldn't remember what it was.
yeah. Oh man.
Um, but no, I think that's a great definition for creativity. And I love asking this question because everybody's answer is always different. But I
Mm,
love what you said about, you know, taking, you didn't say it like this, but the idea is, taking what's there and then reinterpreting it. You know what I'm saying? You taking it through your filter of your perspective, your experiences, the life that you've lived, and
mhm,
then sharing that with the world, right?
mhm.
So I think that is a great definition for sure. So thank you for sharing that. Um, so now let's get into, a little bit about, who you are and what you do. How do you who this is what I wrote down as a question. Who is RJ Atkinson and how do you describe yourself?
Hmm. RJ Atkinson is a storyteller and
Mm,
a creative. And I say those two things not just in relation to my career, but as like a person.
mm,
Most of my hobbies, well outside of film and even writing, are all mostly creative, whether it's photography or music, playing music, writing music, things like that. And kind of having a how do I say this? Put it this way. There's many different ways to do things in life. And I think that I heard a man say he was a kind of like a Myron Golden. I think he said your level of success is proportionate to the level of creativity that you have. Meaning, it's not always just
mm,
about like the creative work that you're doing, but like when you have a problem, how creative can you get to solve it?
mm.
I think life has, in several instances, demanded a level of creativity from me in order to be able to move forward and in order to have like resilience. So, yeah, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because that's actually my definition of creativity. My definition of creativity is problem solving.
Mm, yeah.
Because I think that a lot of times you'll have a problem, something will be in front of you, and the traditional or conventional ways of solving that problem are not available to you.
Right.
And so once you realize that, then it becomes, well, what are you going to do?
Mhm.
You either going to, you know what I'm saying? Like you talk about the resilience, right? Either you're just going to find a way or you're not going to find a way. You know what I'm
Sink or
saying?
swim. Sink or swim.
Um, and so I think it's interesting, definitely interesting that you said that. Um, I do want to ask you a little bit about that resilience and the creativity that you've used to overcome some of those problems. Do you have any examples of what that looks like in your life? And the reason why I'm asking that is because I think sometimes we can say things like, yeah, I had to be resilient, right? But I
Mhm.
think sometimes the word resilience, it's like, well, what does that actually look like in practice, right? And so how have you, what situation can you think of that you've had to practice that resilient creativity in order to see yourself through?
Oh man, that's I'm thinking, do I want to go all the way back, like all the way back in time, or do I want to look at something more recent? I mean, in general, like with my business, um, I mean, I graduated from Georgia State. I got my degree in film. I got my master's degree in film, and a lot of people said, "Well, when you get a master's degree, you'll be able to find a job. It'll be real easy." And then I graduated, and I couldn't get into any of the studios I applied to. None of them.
Wow.
None of
Wow.
them. Like we had Avengers filming on campus. I couldn't get onto a film set. I graduated, and I was like, "Uh oh." And so I went into substitute teaching, and
Mm,
I I remember that was like one phase of creativity for me because while I was in college, I was doing teaching on the side. That's another thing. When I say storyteller, you could say educator. Because when I was in college, I was a teaching assistant in orchestra. I worked with middle school, 6th through 8th grade. The kids knew me so well that the teacher could send me on a field trip by myself with the kids, and the kids wouldn't give me a problem because they knew me.
wow.
And when I went into education basically to kind of hold myself afloat, and I was not working with middle school kids anymore. I was working with elementary school kids who are whiny and liquidy. They're very cute, but liquidy.
Right.
I
Right.
describe kids that way in elementary school. I said that's very accurate. When you see them, you understand. But anyways,
Right. Right.
um, but like you see kids who, gosh, it's like I kind of saw myself in some of them. I was a kid who struggled with reading. I struggled with math. When I was in 3rd grade, the teacher said that I was going to have to be put in special ed classes. I was in ESOL classes because I struggled with reading, and seeing
Wow.
kids struggle and finding my own way to help translate to this kid, like, look, just because you're struggling with this doesn't mean you can't overcome it, and being creative with the kids to help them figure out ways around their own obstacles. And that was just constant improvisation in terms of like working with the kids, navigating this new arena, and then still kind of recognizing that I would go home, go to sleep and wake up, go to work, go home, go to sleep, and just repeat. And I was kind of like, this can't be it. So then veering out and doing K-pop videography. I worked in the K-pop industry. Um, Literally just sent a message to a company. I saw they were doing concerts and said, "Do you need a videographer?" They said, "Sure." And I ended up getting hired, and I went on tour. And the Korean that I learned as a vet from a friend, a dare from a friend, I ended up using, and I still speak it to this day. Some of the things that we do now, I have a very close connection to the Korean community, especially
Wow.
when they learn that I speak Korean as well.
You
And that
speaking fluent?
yes, yes.
Oh,
한국말
wow. That's cool.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so that's an example.
Yeah. Well, how did you learn Korean? That's what I did. Quick detour. How did you learn Korean?
Okay, so gosh, another thing where I was just resilient. So in high school, so when I came back to America, um, and I finally got over the slump of like getting out of ESOL classes and doing better with English in general, I started studying Spanish. And when I got to college, no, when I got to high school, I was in orchestra, and they were saying, "Oh, well, if you want to go further in orchestra, you're gonna have to drop Spanish." So I dropped Spanish, learned French. Then I went to college, and they had a rule that said you had to learn a foreign language from scratch, which meant that I could
Oh,
not.
wow.
Yeah. So I took the test. I tested too high, so I had to start over again with another language. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. At the time in college, I had a lot of Korean friends. At the time, karaoke was really popular. We would go to KBBQ, and my friend was like, "Bet you can't learn Korean. Like, you know the Latin languages, but you can't learn Korean." I said, "Bet."
Right.
So
And here we are now. Now you speak Korean. That's pretty. That's an amazing story, actually.
thank you.
Um, so I I did want to ask this too,
Mhm.
because I've heard this before, where you'll hear the stories of people who struggled with reading or they struggled in English class, but they grow up to be writers.
Mm.
And I wonder, do you ever think about, do you ever reflect on the fact that you struggled with reading and now, you know what I'm saying, you're a writer, you're a storyteller. Like what is that? What has that experience been like for you?
You know, I saw a video once that said sometimes your area of talent is the area you don't even think about. It was
Mm,
almost like it seemed so long ago that I used to struggle with reading. Um, and now like from like my mom now will call me and be like, "Hey, can you check this email for me? I wrote this paper. Can you proofread it?" When she was the one who taught me how to read.
right,
Like
right.
um, I think that I have learned about myself through reflecting on that one, everyone's learning process is different, and sometimes the kids who look like they go out the block sprinting, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. That sometimes the kid who starts slowest is the one who can speed up and end up winning the
Mm,
race. That's not just a pun. That actually was how I was in track and field as well. I used to annoy my coaches, but I had gotten so used to it, and it wasn't until I was reflecting one day and realizing that like my mom was calling me frequently to correct her papers and to send her emails for her, and I was like, wait, oh yeah, that's right. And sometimes she would be like, wow, you've come a long way, but it's like it's become so intuitive to me now because the obstacle has not been English, it's been all the other languages. So
mm,
I just didn't think about it for a while, but
right.
I'm grateful.
Yeah, yeah. So what is it about storytelling? What is it that you fell in love with about storytelling?
Mm. It is the idea that you can be transported into a world, um, and you can, as they say, suspend disbelief, be sucked into this environment and get caught up in this fictional characters' conflict, their existential dread, their world ending paradoxes. And that when you look at the story, even if you step back and are overtly aware of the fact that it's not real, you can analyze them on a deeply psychological level and you can see how deeply human these fictional characters are. And when you look at them and you look at some of the people around you, you can see them in those characters because the characters are written to be so human.
Mm,
It gives you a very good chance to reflect as a person. It gives you a chance to reflect on society. And so, even though it's just a story, it can have such a deep impact on you in terms of
mm,
your thought process. There have been laws that have been changed because of films that were made. The stoning of Soraya M.
mm.
Laws were changed because of that movie. People may not remember what you say in the classroom. They may not remember what you say in the pulpit, but they will remember a movie and they'll remember a book.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And so I mean that brings me to another question that I wanted to ask you about. And I guess you sort of spoke to it just now, but I would like for you to speak to it a little bit more. But when we look at storytelling and we look at social issues, right? Like, how do you balance? I mean, based off what you just said, I'm assuming that you believe that storytelling has a major, you know, impact or can have a major impact on society and social issues, social, problems, if you will, right?
Mhm.
In your work, as a filmmaker, as a, comic book writer, um, how do you balance that line of this is what I want to say with this work, and I also don't want to be preachy with this work, right? Do you find any tension there? Like how do you navigate that? How do you balance that?
Hmm. I think about Quentin Tarantino. A lot of people have different opinions about his movies and his work, but something that my late dad used to point out about him was one, he didn't go to film school, he didn't do the formal training, he very much just grabbed a camera and shot and kind of learned along the way. But something that people pointed out about him is that you learn everything you need to learn about a character, typically through their dialogue, and he will use as little dialogue as possible to tell you as much as possible.
Mm,
And when it comes to relaying important themes, um, I think it's the repetition of how it manifests in different scenarios, different perspectives, but it is
mhm,
ultimately still the same theme. And then it's also a matter of how it's talked about by your characters within the story. So, for example, in the Seventh Kingdom, there is a theme of revenge. And a lot of people think of that and they're just like, oh, okay, cool. Someone wrongs you and you just go and you punch them out, right? But what happens when revenge we see revenge from the protagonist perspective, but what happens when a protagonist makes a mistake and hurts somebody and the person that they
mm,
hurt is now coming back for revenge? Now it gets messy. Now
mhm.
it's a very imperfect situation. It's not so righteous anymore. And so when you're kind of trying to make commentary about revenge and violence and how we solve problems as a society, we'll think of all the different ways that you can have your characters bump up against that problem, that theme.
Right.
And to me, that is how I balance it. And if I read it and I feel myself getting tired of seeing it, like I'm like, oh, this theme again, then I use that as a gauge to taper it down and try
Yeah.
to bring something else to the surface so that you intermittently bring it up and it stays fresh in the audience's mind without tiring them out and without being preachy.
Yeah. 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 And switching gears a little bit, even though I feel like this might be a little bit connected, but I heard you talking about, the Seven Kingdom, which is your manga,
Mhm.
which is very good, by the way. Definitely check that out, y'all, if y'all get a chance. I don't know if I told you, but I got it in the mail. I had ordered it at the con and it came,
Yeah,
Ranger
yeah, yeah.
Stop, and then it came. I got it. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Um, so I heard you talking about how one of the things that well, not enjoy, but one of the things you wanted to do with the Seven Kingdom
Mhm.
was you wanted the challenge of telling a new story in a new medium.
Mhm.
And so what I wonder about is what were those challenges going from filmmaking to now writing a manga? What were those challenges, and how did you, overcome those challenges?
Mm. Um, well, I think with film, you can let things marinate a little bit more because it's an immediate moving image. And so people perceive it a little bit differently. The reaction is a lot faster. Whereas with
Right.
manga, people read and then sometimes they read and they immediately close the book. So if they don't get it
Right. Right.
immediately, sometimes it's almost like they miss the mark in a way. And so you have to make it something that is relayed succinctly enough for them to get it.
Mm.
Um, and I think that as a filmmaker, it helped that I looked at things from a cinematic perspective in terms of framing, composition, panels. That's why the artist was willing to work with me. But then there were times where like I wanted a lot of detail, and the artist was like, no, no, no. Here, minimalism will do. Minimalism creates the emphasis and the point of focus. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And sometimes understanding the concept of like page pull and passage of time and understanding like the nuances. Like I could see how manga and film were similar, and that actually was a problem because there are ways that manga was distinctly different that I was completely oblivious to. That was part
Mm.
for me. Um, I think right in terms of writing, I write the manga as a script the same way that I write film. I write it in screenplay format.
Oh,
And
really?
yes, which I thought I looked in the software and I saw that there's an actual template. And when I looked at the template, I was like, this is very limiting. Like I can't tell the story with depth that I want. So I just kept it in screenplay format. Um,
Wow. Okay.
mm, because this is just like what I know, but
Yeah.
realizing that
Yeah.
you have to be careful not to pack too much in there. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah. 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 I mean, and I think the reason why that quote stuck out to me is because I also write in a bunch of different mediums. And so, I write screenplays, I'm working on a novel, I write comic books, right?
mhm,
And what I love the challenge, like you said, but it's recognizing what each medium does well and what the strength. So like if I'm writing prose, if I'm writing a novel, I know that the strength of this medium is the ability to get into the head of the character,
The
right?
internal thought, right.
So it's remembering to use that strength when I'm in that medium, right?
Yes.
But when
Mhm.
I'm writing a screenplay, I know that that strength is different than that strength of the prose. So now I got to say, okay, cool. Let me lean into this strength, right? But it's the
Yes.
same for comic books. When I go to comic books, that has a different strength than both of those. So now I have to lean into that strength, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's why I think it's interesting that you write your comic books using, like, that would drive me crazy. Not because it's impossible to do, but
Uh,
I think I like the mental shift of saying, okay, this is the format that I write my comic books in. This
mhm,
is the format that I write my screenplays in, and this is the format that I write my novels in, right? If I had to do all of those at the same time, like all in the same format, I
mhm,
think it would mess with me a little bit, right? So that's why I think it's interesting that
mhm,
that you said that for sure.
mhm.
Um, so how did you overcome those challenges?
Mm.
Did you have like practical things that you did, or did you? Yeah.
But being willing to like learn and remembering like to go in with like a completely empty cup.
Mm,
And there were times where like the illustrator was actually teaching me things, and I was like, ah, okay. And but part of why I wrote it as a screenplay is because when you hand it to the illustrator, if the illustrator can vividly envision how this is supposed to look, then they can map it out, and more or less the calibration process kind of goes back and forth from there. So I think that my way of navigating that too was any details that felt a little bit too excessive, we would snip, and then they would create the panel, and I'd say, I like this panel, let's take it from a different angle, let's do a low angle close up, so on and so forth. And it was very much throw spaghetti at the wall until you find what sticks
mm,
kind of process. So I feel like that was my way of handling it. And I also like I looked at other manga, and I remember when my mom lived in Tokyo, I like went to manga shops, and I bought like a couple volumes of like Attack on Titan, I remember Demon Slayer was funny because I was trying to find the fight scene in the entertainment arc, and I was trying to find a specific fight like moment in their fight because I had watched the anime first, and I ran into the shop, and I grabbed a volume, and I ripped it open, bought it, ripped it open, read it, and I was like, wait, the scene's not in here. So then I like ran back inside,
mm.
got another book, ran back out. I did, like that's how I ended up buying the whole arc. But studying, I had to study and kind of
Yeah.
just be humble enough to say, you know what? As much as I may know about filmmaking, I actually don't know much about manga at all. So be willing to look for extra sources and learn and be adaptable in that regard.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned being in Tokyo,
Hmm.
and that was another thing that I wanted to ask you about. Um, you talked about growing up in another country,
Hmm.
and you talked about how, when you came back to America, you had to deal with, just some of the, you're not black enough, or you're not this
Mm.
enough, or you're not that enough, right? And so I think in as a result of that, I think I wanted to ask you about your viewpoint, your perspective on representation, specifically of black people in media. Like, how important do you think that is?
Hmm.
Yeah, how important do you think that is?
Mm. Integral, and not just in the sense of showing a black character, or a black caricature. It's important that people see the diversity of blackness and the presentation of blackness, um, because I feel like, how do I say this? Something that I've run into with my main character, for example, is that people look at her and sometimes they're like, is she black? Is she black? She doesn't quite look. That's a question that we get. But in reality, we know that there are black people who look like us. Then there are black people who have hair like Zendaya and a complexion like Zendaya. And then there are black people who look like Lupita Nyong'o, right? And there's a variety. There are people with vitiligo, and there are people with dreads, and there are people with one of the illustrators who was on the team for Tagline 9. Actually, both of them were mixed, but one of them, her hair was like wavy. It was practically not curly. You wouldn't know that she had a black father. And so for me, my perception of representation is not just showing a black person, or like say a dark skinned person. It's showing all the different ways that black people all the different shapes and forms that they can come in, so that everyone feels seen. And that even extends to, say, like a light skinned character, because there has been a history of, say, kind of racially ambiguous characters getting a little bit more highlight. But for me, I'm not just putting a light skinned character in there just to put it in there. There's actually something deeper. There's a deeper connection that ties to some of the themes of the series. And there are some assumptions that you're forced to challenge as the series progresses. So for me, it's giving the presentation and being intentional and having like a deeper purpose behind it. To me, all of that is essential.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm laughing because I just got a message, and the question is, why am I wearing? We're gonna get back to the question, but they're asking why I'm wearing my headphones like this. Okay, so
Yeah.
I have a hat on, and when I wear it, when I wear my headphones upright, it's not sitting properly, so I just pulled it down. You know what I'm saying? Oh, because the other thing is this side is not really working right, so I need to have it like off my ear. But when
I
it's
feel
like
that.
it's messing everything up, so I just thought, what if I just pull it down a little bit? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's working. So
That's
this is
funny.
the
I mean,
reason why I'm wearing the headphones like this.
if it floats, let it sail. I thought it was fashion.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you. You know, everybody is not going to be as understanding as you. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's not gonna. You know what I'm saying? It's all good though. It's all good. Um, but I think what you said, all of that was great, and I agree with everything that you said. Right, catching the variety and the diversity of Black people, right? And I think the other thing too is that when I say Black people, I think a lot of times growing up, if I said Black, I meant like Black American people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a diaspora of people, right? And so it's like there's Black people in America, but there's Black people in the Caribbean. There's Black people in, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if you remember, this was like a couple years ago, but this meme, or not meme, but this video was going around, and it was like, y'all know there's Black people in Scotland? And everybody's like, yo,
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, I was
there's
looking.
Black people in Scotland, yo.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's Black people everywhere. Yeah, go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, even like when I went to like, people don't understand that, like, there's a generation of kids in Japan and in Korea and some of these countries who, like, they have a Black parent, and their understanding of Blackness and Black experience is completely different from like being here in America, because they don't have that imagery or that proximity to like the culture. They're Japanese by most all means, and then they come to America, and they don't quite know where to fit. But yeah, I guess just saying that to say that there's variety. I have a cousin in England who she's Black British. She'll bust out patois one minute and then switch to British UK accent the next. So yeah,
Yeah,
we're all over
yeah,
the place.
yeah. So piggybacking off of that though,
Mm.
how do you think, and maybe you answered this already, but how do you think, you spending time in another country? I think you said your parents are from another country, correct?
Jamaica.
So Jamaica, right? So having parents from another country, spending time in other countries, right? How do you think that has impacted or influenced or informed this perspective that you have on you know Black people, Black culture, and us being open to that variety? Like, how has that impacted that or informed that for you?
Um, it has given me, oh gosh, so many different. Okay, give me a second here, because on one hand, I have had the privilege of being part of a culture where they had their own island to themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
the level of pride and confidence that comes from that, the mentality, the cultural mentality that comes from that is one thing. Um, so there's that. And there's knowing that, like, you can do anything you set your mind to. It doesn't matter what the country's history was, doesn't matter what rule someone tries to put in place. Resilience, you're going to find a way around it. Your ancestors found a way around it. You can too. You have more resources. That there's that. But then there's also this perception of like Jamaica, the what's the word? The slogan for Jamaica is "out of many one people," and there is a prevalence of Indian Jamaicans. So for me, actually, recently, one of my grandmothers passed away, and we found out that her father was Syrian. I didn't know that Syrian people were in Jamaica, that they left Syria to escape the Ottoman Empire, avoided America because the Civil War was going on, went down to Cuba. If they didn't like it there, they went over to Jamaica because it's a stone's throw away. So my grandmother's father was Syrian, but her mother was Black. My grandfather's mother on my mom's side was Indian. Like her, wow. She had an Irish name, I think because she converted to Christianity, but she was Indian. He straight up said that she had long, wavy hair. And I've been to Florida. I've seen Chinese Jamaicans. Actually, there's a guy in Stone Mountain that they call him Mr. Chin. If you see him, he looks Chinese, but then he speaks patois. I've seen white Jamaicans. So there's a sense of like being Jamaican was not necessarily relegated to a race. It was more so relegated to like a cultural understanding and like a physical location. Like that mentality that comes from that area as well. And so there's a sense of like, you're proud of your Blackness and you see what Black people can do together. But at the same time, there's also the sense of like embracing other people who may not look like you, but having an understanding that there's a cultural mentality that unites you. So that's the other perception of it. And then in a weird way, I guess when you talk about coming from traveling and going to different countries, understanding how deeply we are impacted by the environment that we're in. And here's what I mean. Let's say, for example, tattoos. I remember when I studied abroad in France. When I studied abroad in France, 2014, we went to...
You've been everywhere. Hold up. Wait a minute. We talking?
Yes, I have.
All right, continue. Well, France. We're in France.
So, funny story behind that. So the school that I went to study abroad to, right? My dad studied abroad to the same place in 2004. 10 years later, when I'm in college, I'm like, hey, I want to study abroad. They said, go ahead. I went, I came back, I took pictures, showed it to my dad, and he was like, wait, this looks familiar. And he's like looking, and he's like, I know this building, and found out we went to the same school 10 years apart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But being in, and even okay, gosh, let me not get ahead of myself. Having parents from Jamaica who were in Germany, we got to travel around different parts of Europe. We had a German family. To this day, we're good friends with them. When my dad passed away, they were sad they couldn't attend the funeral. We have pictures, like a good chunk of my childhood was formulated around this German family, the Kirschers. And I mean, they took us to Austria, Italy, France. We took them to Jamaica. Mr. Kirscher, to this day, I asked him, I said, if you were to retire, where would you like to go? He said, Jamaica. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. He wants to go to Jamaica because of that ingrained in him. So I've seen what it's like to have those bonds with people who look different from you, but you can still acknowledge that bond. And so going back now, when I went to France, tattoos. People in banks had tattoos. They had dreads. They dressed a certain way. They had nose piercings. In 2014, that was unusual because in America, they're saying, well, if you look like that, you're not going to get a job.
Right.
So then realizing that like that mentality is a very American mentality because in other countries, that's not the case. And I think it kind of put me in a place where it like knocked me out the box of like the American mindset, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, certain things that people perceive, even down to like food, there are things that I will notice about food that other people won't notice because they've only ever eaten food here in America. They've not had it in Japan. They've not had it in France. So they've not seen the difference. So that was a lot, but I think that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the thing about traveling, and I need to do more traveling. I really haven't done a lot of it, but I think what I'm understanding, what I'm hearing from you is, you know, when you travel, it really opens your mind to, you know, possibility. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, I've seen things done this way. And then you go somewhere and it's like, oh, there's other ways to do this thing. Like, it doesn't have to be this thing, right?
Yes.
And so I think that is a very, I got to do more traveling. At the end of the day, that's what I realized. I got to do more traveling. One thing that I heard you say, this was another interview. I don't even know what this interview was from, actually. I think I just saw this on Instagram. But you said they asked you the question, what would you tell a young woman or young women who are trying to do something ambitious or, you know, something like that? And your response was, there's a time for everything, but there never really is a perfect time. There's
Yes.
a time for everything, but there never really is a perfect time.
Mhm.
And I just wonder if you could just expound on that and talk about what that means to you. What does that quote mean to you?
That means that you have to have the discernment to know when to move, when to strike while the iron is hot. That there may be a time to call somebody out, and there may be a time to sit back quietly and let people show you who they are.
Mm,
There's a time to kind of pick up your bridges and do everything yourself. And then there's a time when that's not feasible anymore. And you have to have the
mm,
discernment to now pick a team, find people who are reliable that you can build with, grow with, and hone in on when certain comments are made and say, ah, wait a second, that's going
mm,
to be a problem, rather than letting it escalate. So there's an appropriate time to do things. You see what I'm saying? But at the same time, if you wait until everything's perfect, you will never move.
mm,
Take it from a chronic perfectionist. If you wait until everything, like, I understand that when I started my company, RPX Media Production, I had not taken a business class. I did not have a degree in business. I did not have any connections to the film industry aside from having worked as a PA on some larger sets, like for like Tyler Perry Studios and maybe Nickelodeon. But that was as a PA, you understand? And even then, I'd had my business before I did that. If I had, and I was hesitant, if I had continued to wait until I felt that I was perfectly ready, I would have never started, because guess what? I would have never really fully been ready, because
mm.
the kind of problems that I encountered, I could go back in time and tell myself, but like if I told myself back then, I wouldn't want to start it. I wouldn't want to do it. But it's like when you face the problem, you're like, all right, I have to just get through it, and that's it. And you just, again, the resilience. You use your resources, you use your network, your connections. You learn. Sometimes you fall, you make mistakes. Sometimes you trust the wrong people. Sometimes it backfires. It costs you thousands of dollars. Sometimes you are focused in one area of your business, and maybe it doesn't quite work out the way you wanted, and you're fighting and you're frustrated, and now you say, you know what, where is my sense of joy? And you have to pivot. If you expect to keep going forward, you have to be willing to kind of face that uncertainty. And
Yeah.
so I say that there
Ooh.
is no perfect time, and that will paralyze a lot of people. They don't want to move unless they have 100% clarity. But a lot of people that I've seen who are very successful, it sometimes it's just a feeling. They're like, this feels like it's going to work, so I'm just going to do it, and that's it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
works. Sometimes you just have to be willing to take that bet. You have to
Yeah.
take that risk, and risk aversion is the biggest stunt of growth.
Mm. And I think there's an interesting thing about this, right? Where it's like, so do you know who Sir Robert Branson? I think his name Branson. Robert Branson. I feel like this is not his name actually, but he's the guy who started the Virgin Mobile company, like Virgin Mobile and Virgin
Yes.
Airlines.
Yes.
I think it's Robert Branson. You know what I'm talking about?
I
Richard Branson, whatever his name is, right?
yeah.
I did like when I was taking college courses, I did like a book, not a book report, but I was in school for broadcast journalism. So we
Mhm,
had to pick like a high profile person, and then we had to like do research and like give like a presentation as if we like interviewed him, right?
mhm, mhm.
And so my person was I think it's Sir Richard Branson. And I came across a quote where he said, if somebody asks you if you know how to do something, tell them yes,
And figure it
and then
out.
figure it out as you're
Yep.
doing it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that sounds great. That sounds great. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. But
the thing that I be thinking about is I
uh-huh.
think for black people, for a lot of black, not all black people, but for a lot of black people, I don't know if we always have the space to fail, right?
That's
Because
true.
failures. So I worked at a restaurant, and there was a guy. He told me this story. The owner of the restaurant. He told me a story. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if he told me or somebody else told me. But basically, the story was his dad gave him money, invested in him to start a restaurant. He
Mhm,
started the restaurant, and the restaurant failed. They lost all
mhm,
his money. They had to shut down. Boom. His dad calls him in for a meeting, and he says, "Hey, what did you learn?" Right? They go through all the things that they learned. I got, this didn't work. This didn't work. This didn't work. His dad said, cool, wrote him another check. He said, start another one. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you say risk, when we start talking about risk, it's like, okay, how much risk what did he really, you know what I'm saying? Like you know, it wasn't really risky for him because they got a cushion, they got extra money, he can start another one, he can do this, he can do that, right?
Yeah.
Some of us be on our last dollars. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yo, like you really are you really gonna risk it all? Like for real? You know what I'm saying? And I think that's where and I'm not saying that to push back on what you're saying. I think what you're saying is absolutely and completely true.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's difficult for us to understand that when it seems like if we fail here, we're not going to come back from this. Like there's, again, not to say that we're not going to come back or we can't come back. It just feels like we not coming back from this. You know what I'm saying? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, two things come to mind. One of them being, I know this family that maybe they started in their 30s and now they're about in their 50s, 60s, and they are good. They're good. People come to their house and are like, how did y'all do this? And they had mentors who I was sitting around the table with them, and they said, some people, you choose your hard, you choose your difficult, you choose risk.
Yeah.
For some people, it's too risky to struggle with the business for 3 years when they could have possibly succeeded at year 4, and they would rather stay at the job that feels like it's safer.
Right.
But it's golden handcuffs because someone dictates your time, someone dictates your schedule. You're tired all the time, you don't like it, and it corrodes and chips away at you until you're in your 60s when you can retire. And then when you have no more energy left, then you try to do the things you want to do. And it's not to say that that's too late. It's not to say that's too late, but more like you can. I look at it partly from the perspective of like, you can choose the safer route or you can choose the risky route, but both of them have risk. It's just which one you're more willing to tolerate. The risk of staying in an unfulfilling job. I personally used to get in trouble at jobs that I hated anyway. I shouldn't be saying this, but I used to get you because like I was told by one of my managers that I asked dangerous questions because I would see people's systems and I'd be like, why are we doing it like this? Why don't we do it like X? And it's not to say that I didn't respect their system, but I could see that there was this very grossly inefficient system that they were trying to force us to fit into like a square peg for. And I was like, this doesn't even work. Like it doesn't work. Why are we doing it? And I used to get in trouble for saying things like that. So my options were continue to get in trouble and continue to get picked on by coworkers because I was outperforming them. And making them feel threatened. That's not to sound arrogant. What I'm saying is that happened a lot. Yeah. So it was stay in those jobs where I was going to constantly deal with the resentment and the frustration and the unfulfillment, or take the risk and try to make this business work. But we talk about resources, and that is where I am extremely grateful because when I was working in the classroom and COVID hit and they had teachers signing release forms to they died from COVID, the family couldn't sue because that's what they were doing back then.
Wow.
My dad called me and he said, so they're making teachers go back face to face? I said, yeah, this is before they had the vaccine, before they really knew it was safe. And I said, yeah, I guess I have to. And he was like, you're really going back? I said, well, what choice do I have? And he kind of was, at the time I wasn't making much money anyways. And he was like, just focus on your business. I was like, what do you mean? He said, we'll give you a little cushion and just focus on your business until it takes off, because what they're paying you anyways, we could give you that and it would be the same. And I was like, and it's true, because at that teaching position, what I made for the month, once I bought groceries, I was kind of running on fumes, you know? So that is something that I have had the privilege of having that most people do not get to have. Another thing that I found people also do, some people will go and get grants. They will find someone who will mentor them in getting grants. And I think you've heard about like Tony Weaver. I think he got a really big grant to push out his series, and he was already an influencer. So he had the audience already, he had the following, the people to market to, and he got the money. So I would say it is about resources, and it's about where you get your resources from. So are you willing to take the risk of staying at the unfulfilling job, or are you willing to take the risk to find an investor or learn about grants so that you can move? That's another perspective, I guess you could have.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I think that I just wrote this down. I saw this meme yesterday, and it was
Mhm,
a quote, and it said, I'm gonna mess up the quote, but it was basically like, keep going
mhm,
or quit.
mhm.
Newsflash, they're both going to hurt. Like,
Mm. Yes,
it
yes,
don't matter. Like, you could
yes,
quit, it's gonna hurt. You could keep
yes,
going, it's gonna hurt.
yes.
And I thought about that when you said you got to choose your heart, right? Like, you got to choose. I saw a fitness person talking about this, right? Where it's like, yes, working out is going to leave you sore, but you could either choose the pain of soreness, or you could choose the pain of like not being able to, walk
Mhm,
when you're 80 or whatever, whatever the case may be, right? Like, you got
mhm.
to choose. Everything is a choice. It's
Yeah.
going to hurt, but
Mhm.
it's going to be a choice that you make. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, I just think what you said was so good about choosing your heart, right? Choosing, it's all a risk, right? And that's the other thing. This is the last thing I'm gonna say, and then we can move to the next thing. But
Mhm.
everybody thought they had a secure job. Like, if you work like at like in a corporation, where it was like, yo, my job is secure. And then COVID hit, and it was like, wait a minute,
Wait a minute. Yeah.
hold
Yeah.
up. It's
Yep.
not as secure as I thought it was. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
Yeah. Mhm, mhm.
And so it's just like, people, I think sometimes we go for the feeling of security over what security actually means and what security actually like is. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
Short-term
so
goal.
we can feel secure because somebody's giving you a paycheck, but you
Mhm.
just feel secure. You're not actually secure because they could take that away from you whenever they want. You feel me?
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, that's a. I feel like we could talk about that. We could talk about that all day. Um. So the one of the last things that I wanted to ask you about was, and this is going back to the social issue, social activism, if you will. You also
Mhm,
have in conjunction with RPX, your
mhm.
media company, you also have a nonprofit. How do you pronounce it? Is it Fire, or is it how you? It is Fire. Okay. So it's Fire. Can you talk a little bit about what your nonprofit is, what it does, and how that came about?
Hmm. So FIRE is it's actually 501(c)(4), so it's not a conventional nonprofit.
Okay.
Um, Basically means that it has lobbying power to change laws, in essence,
Gotcha.
should we decide to go that route. But basically, it's a entity that was used to foster conversations through kind of a bit of an arts-based approach to raise awareness about racial literacy, about racial trauma, basically bringing together like a diverse community to have these conversations in a safe space where they can feel a sense of being seen, being heard. And then at the same time, for those who want to learn, who want to understand, it's a place where they can go and they can get that understanding firsthand. Because there's something about researching an article about um, Trayvon Martin, and then it's another to sit in a story exchange and hear maybe someone who's like his cousin talk about what it was like for the
Mm,
family to have gone through that experience and be all over them. You see what I'm saying?
yeah.
Um, and in essence, I wanted to start that nonprofit, and that was also something that, and my dad was someone who, whenever I came to him with these ideas, he was very shrewd and very keen to kind of like really like rip it to shreds. But when I told him
Hmm.
about this idea, he was like, "I like this." He got quiet and he hung up. Then the next day he called me back, and he said, "Let's get this started. This needs to
Mm,
exist, happen." And I say that it was such an eye-opening experience, and it was integral for me and directly impacted the writing of the Seventh Kingdom, because some of the questions, some of the behaviors, mentalities that I saw, some of the things that were said, actually, I echo that back in the series. When you're talking about pain, lingering trauma, when you're talking about regret, when you're talking about people who look at the world or experience the world from one perspective, and they're either too afraid to look into someone else's lived experience because they know that it's going to be uncomfortable and they'd rather avoid that discomfort, or someone who's willing to stare the horse in the mouth and look at it and deal with that discomfort, but they're trying to grapple with the discomfort in their own way so that they don't get exhausted. So we did story exchanges with people virtually, and I remember I'll never forget. I always tell the story of I think she might have been a white Jewish woman who was in our circle, and she was paired with a black woman. Both women were in their 50s, 60s. And the black woman talked about the experience of working at this law firm where she went in, she was taken in at a young age, and they said to her, okay, we're going to train you. We're going to get you certified to become a lawyer, and we're going to let you join our law firm. And a year turned to 2, turned to 5, turned to 10, turned to 20, and she stayed the secretary. And then they brought in other young white individuals and mentored them and pushed them forward. And she stayed the desk clerk. And the way she was angry about it. And when she brought it up at work, they would tell her she was crazy, imagining things. She was being aggressive. She was being gaslit. That was a big thing we talked about, the racial gaslighting. How when people share their experience, they're told, "Nuh-uh, that doesn't exist," or "Nuh-uh, I've not seen it. And if I haven't seen it, it doesn't exist." And how infuriating that was for her. And she was paired with a white Jewish woman who recounted the experience of moving down south to an area in Georgia where they had Confederacy parades. And she confronted the other white people at the grocery store about the Confederacy parade. And she was like, "What are y'all celebrating? Y'all lost the war. What's the point?"
Right.
And she was blacklisted. Blacklisted by the community. Her children were bullied. She couldn't find a babysitter for her children. Her husband started to experience hard times at his job. She couldn't get a job. They had to pack their stuff up and leave town.
Wow.
And these two women were paired together, and the way it worked was they told each other's story in first person, and they both broke down crying because the black woman said, "My whole life I've been told that I was just being extra. I was just being angry when I talked about my experience and talked about being gaslit. And here you actually experienced it firsthand from your own people. So you know that we're not just crazy, like it's actually happening." But a lot of white people don't want to admit it. And she was now crying because she was just like, that was what I experienced from my own community. How much worse is it for the black community?
Wow.
And the two of them, it was such a powerful moment. I think to this day, they might actually still keep in touch because when the event ended, they exchanged information and they were still talking to each other. Well beyond that, they became friends. But we had moments like that. And I enjoyed doing that because I felt that it was deeply healing. And I thought to myself, if me being a first generation American am seeing things like George Floyd and Trayvon Martin, and I was feeling this heavy weight, how much harder has it been for people who have been in this country for generations? And how much harder has it been for them knowing that things happened in the past and then people were just slapped together and there was no conversation about it? And if anything, you're told, just get over it. While we're saying never forget the Holocaust, no one wants to talk about the elephant in the room, you know? And so, yeah, all of that ended up fueling the Seventh Kingdom as well in terms of some questions I had raised.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. Definitely, if you're watching this and you're hearing this, definitely check out, everything that Robbie has going on, from her books to her storytelling with RPX Media, but also with, this incredible, 501c4, this organization where she's, fostering and curating these type of conversations and events. So definitely, however we can support that, we need to get behind that because we need more of those conversations and more of those moments. Like you said, that's very, very powerful stuff for sure. So before we get out of here, I have one more segment. It's called The One. These are like, you know what? It's funny. I say these are rapid fire questions, but whenever I'm asking these questions, they don't really end up being rapid fire. Like people just take however long they want to answer them. So it's fine though. It's been good. So I'm gonna just ask the questions and then you can just take them however you want, right?
All right.
But the segment is called The One, and it's 5 questions. Hold on, let me pull my questions up. Hold up. Here we go. All right. First one is, what's one book or comic book you think everyone should read?
Oh man, that's tough. Gosh, I'm tied between Berserk and I'm trying to remember this book. There was a book, was it called The Kite Runner? I remember The Kite Runner because it talked about a little boy's lived experience in this country where there was like, it was like Iran or something. The country was war torn, and the little boy's experience with like some of the like almost like when the country is torn apart, the kind of adults that you encounter, the ones who protect you, the ones who kind of try to help you survive from day to day, and then the ones who were predatory. And this child was navigating that. And I feel like that just changed my brain chemistry when I read that. But Berserk, because Berserk is so deep, and that's a whole other dissertation. But Berserk, because Griffith is a wonderful villain, and by wonderful I mean awful. And then there's a lot of underlying themes. So, yeah, those two.
So I haven't read it. I just
Uh-huh.
watched the anime, and that little egg seed thing with the little eye,
Yeah,
that thing freaks me out. I ain't gonna hold you.
yeah, yeah.
That thing.
I looked at that and I was looking at it, yeah, throughout the series, and I was like, "That's a really ugly looking thing. I wonder what's gonna
That
happen with
thing
that."
is
And then we see it,
crazy.
oh, oh, yeah.
Oh man. No, but that's a good one though. That's a classic. Berserk is a classic for sure.
Mm.
What's one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Oh gosh. I would say how you feel matters.
Mm,
And the reason why I say that is because many a times I found myself in situations where when I picked up on a certain thing, a certain vibe, I ignored it and said no. Yeah, I mean, I'm just a little sensitive, so maybe I'm just like assuming the worst about this person, or oh, and then they would show themselves, and I would say,
mm,
oh wait, I saw this coming. And sometimes the regret was not the mistake that was made, but also the fact that I actually saw it coming, but I like
mm,
gaslit myself myself. So how you feel and what you discern about a situation matters. And sometimes you will pick up on something faster than your brain can intellectualize it. Pay attention to
mm,
that.
mm. That's good. That's good. Um, what's one word you would want to describe your legacy?
Ooh. I'm gonna go with the slogan of the company. Wonder. Wonder. Wonder, because I want people to look and say, that kind of situation, that kind of thing, that kind of breakthrough, it shouldn't have been possible. But I mean,
Mm,
even now, kind of seeing that with what a colleague said to me. I met up with a colleague who knew me from the K-pop industry, and we sat down and we talked, and I told him everything I'd been up to since he last saw me. Because when he saw me, I was just doing videography, and he was just like, "How did you do all of that? You just sent emails and just showed up and just did this." And even just going into manga, like a lot of people look on and they're like, "Where did you come from? Do you been in the game for a long time? Like, what did you?" No, no. But
mm,
when you show up, you show up. So
mm.
wonder.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. What's one thing you would change about your creative journey?
Mm. Start sooner. Start sooner. I was so afraid. I was so afraid to start. And truth be told, I look at, looking at it from a very logical perspective. When you look at people like BTS or even Zendaya, right, as like an actress, when you look at a lot of them, BTS started back in 2013, and they were going even farther back because they were going through their training period. And then they did that vlog where they were walking around California. No one knew who they were. They were walking through the streets, just pulling people off the street into music videos. And from 2013, I'd say, until it took like 2018 before people really started to know who they were. I remember 2013, I said, "Oh, K-pop's going to be as big as like anime." And I remember when I said that, the dude in the room with me looked at me like, "Nah." But we see what it's
Here
becoming
we
now.
are. Right.
They started sooner. Zendaya started young. Most people don't know that she was in like dance shows and all kinds of things. So when you see people with this level of success now, they started way back when. Give yourself time. Start young, because that when we talk about risk, you can start when you're young. You can make mistakes then, and if you learn those lessons sooner, then you are more mature faster, and therefore you have a different result at a different age.
You know, that's the most common answer, I think, when I ask that question. What would
Hmm.
you change about your creative journey? I feel like I need to go back and count, but I feel like most people have said start sooner. That's, I
Interesting. Yeah.
mean, and you know what they say though? They
Hmm.
say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time
Is now.
is right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what is one thing that you want everyone that hears this or sees this to take away from this conversation?
Mm, that you can do this too. You can do this too. Anything, whatever thing it is that you want to do. I heard a quote once that said that if you set your mind on something and it seems maybe a little far away, a little impossible, the only reason it's on your mind is because it's been accomplished in some timeline.
Mm,
So you can do it too.
mm. Yeah, you can do it too. Um, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming through, Robbie. You guys definitely check out everything that Robbie has going on. We didn't really touch on everything that Robbie has going on, but she does film. She has a short film. It won an award, right? That short film you did?
Nine. That was crazy. We won 9
9
awards.
awards, right? Short
Yeah.
films. She's got a manga out that's continuing to run. I mean, she really is doing the work, and it's showing in the community. So thank you so much, Robbie, for coming through. I'm so glad I got to meet you at. I feel like I met you before Ranger Stop because you seem like really familiar, but I think that was the first time like we had a conversation at Ranger Stop, and so
Yeah.
I just appreciate you. I appreciate being able to see you in action and talking to people and selling your books and just the energy that you bring. So I just appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming through tonight. This has been great. And to the audience, to the viewers, thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for tuning in. Definitely, if you want to support the show, you could buy me a coffee. But also make sure, I don't think I said this at the beginning, like this, subscribe to the channel, share this with somebody. Stay tuned to what we got going on here at Roland Live. We actually, I'm going to just let y'all know there's some changes coming with the show. And I'm excited to announce those things. I'm not going to announce it yet, but just know in the next couple of weeks, there'll be some changes. Some things are happening with what I'm doing. So, but I'll let y'all know. But I'm going to need y'all support. I'm going to need y'all to back me. So I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Before we go, Robbie, do you have anything you want to plug? Anything you want to let people know about? Where they can find you? All of that. Do you want to?
Yes. So people who are interested in learning more about the manga series can find us on Instagram at V_7th. That's the number 7th_kingdom. Or they can go to rpxmediaproduction.com/the 7th kingdom. Again, that's the number 7. And volume 1 of the manga is out. We're actually working on book 1 of the light novel, which is going to be like 5 volumes in one. So we've got also artwork in the manga, and then we're going to have illustrations in the light novel, and you're going to get the full first arc of the series by book 2. So keep your eyes on the horizon for that too, and stay tuned for updates with RPX and with Fire, because we will be picking things back up with that too. So yes,
For sure. Thank you again, Robbie, for that. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for being a part, and I will see y'all next week. As always, I love y'all. Peace.